All right. Good morning, everybody. Well, actually, it's been an early morning for you all being at the Keynote bright and early. I'm so excited that you're here at 11 a.m. Hey, no yawning in the back. I saw that. I'm so excited you're all here this morning as we talk about disruptive thinking in our classrooms. My name is Eric. A few housekeeping items. My slides are already in the dashboard. So all the slides, they're in there. You can access them on the app or through the dashboard. So that's all there. My name, Eric, former principal, teacher from New Jersey. I'll tell you a little bit more in a little bit how I got here. I got a few activities to get you kind of to reflect on your practice. Also, if you're on social media, I just shared about 50 free resources on Twitter, but I will put that in the dashboard as well. And we are here in Orlando. The hashtag for the event, MSC 2023. So feel free to share, not stuff from my session, but all the other amazing things that you're learning. All right, we're going to get going. You know, when we think about where we are today, yeah, it can be a little frustrating. It can be a little bit challenging. But we always have to remember the impact that you have. You know, you as educators create this massive ripple effect that makes waves that unleash the potential of all learners. We all know that education is a calling. Is it easy? No, but it is fulfilling. And when we think about your impact that you can have, your calling is to make a splash and not to do things the way we've always done them. Your calling is to make a splash and shatter the status quo. Let me show you what that looks and feels like. All right, are we ready? Oh, I love Instagram Reels. Short, sweet, funny. If you want to know how to download them, there's an app for that, and I can show you later. All right, so when we think about, changing, to change and grow, we have to challenge conventional wisdom. Here's the thing, everybody. We are impacted by experience. We often teach the way we were taught, and we lead the way we were led. There's nothing inherently wrong with that, but we have to, it's okay to challenge. It's okay to say, I don't know, I need help. And when we think about this disruptive world, the pandemic, technology, now all everyone's talking about is artificial intelligence, BARD, ChatGPT. Here's the thing, everybody. We don't know what normal is, and that's okay. So where do we begin as we begin to think about what we've always done to how do we not just adapt, not just survive, how do we thrive in a world that is only going to become more and more disruptive? So I think back to the Jetsons. Do you know the Jetsons only ran for a season and a half in the late 1960s? But the Jetsons got us to rethink normal way back when. And do you know the Jetsons accurately predicted many of the technological innovations that are either good or not so good for us? 3D printers, smartwatches, tablets, tanning beds. The Jetsons accurately predicted all that. They got us to rethink normal long time ago. When we think about rethinking normal, I go back to pre-K, which was a long time ago. And I remember Mrs. McDonald. There were two things that stood out from Mrs. McDonald's class. Number one, the wooden train that we all fought over. It was the toy in the 70s. And purple cow milk. How many of you have had purple cow milk before? All right, not that many. You've had regular milk, chocolate milk, strawberry milk. But milk with grape juice? Oh, don't make those faces. If it was bad, I would not have remembered it. She got us to rethink normal. And when we go and we think about where we want to be, I grew up in Jersey, spent a lot of time at the Jersey Shore. Yes, there we go. And you were walking down the Jersey Shore on the boardwalk. These are like normal tan lines you'd see. But as we rethink normal and we think about all this change, yeah, things might be a little different today as we think about normal. What is normal? It's hard to really get a grasp of that, everybody. But I'm here to tell you, it's okay not to know. No one has all the answers. I don't care what their name is, how many books they've written, no one has all the answers. And if you're still trying to figure things out in your professional and your personal lives, I'm here to tell you it's okay, because everyone is still trying to figure things out. Like this guy.
Mr. Ponton, I believe you have a filter turned on in the video settings. You might want to take a look.
Can you hear me, Judge?
I can hear you. I think it's a filter.
It is, and I don't know how to remove it. I've got my assistant here. She's trying to, but I'm prepared to go forward with it. I'm here live. I'm not a cat.
It's okay, everybody. That was actual deposition in Texas during the pandemic. But as we begin to rethink normal, we have to understand, what are those inhibitors? You know, what blocks us from taking those risks? And typically that's the way we've always done it. This is how I was taught. And when we think about that dangerous phrase, I think about to my initial years. I was the principal that blocked and banned social media. I was the principal that ran through my school and kids would run from me because they knew if they broke our cell phone policy that we would take their device for the entire year. And when we think about change, we change when we see value, or when we become so uncomfortable that we understand that our practice might not be benefiting those that we serve. So in 2009, as I was running through the building, I wasn't running yet, but I was walking through the building and I saw a student. We made eye contact, and then he ran. And I got on my technology at the time, my trusted technology, the walkie-talkie, and I said, "Jerry, we got another runner." And then Jerry didn't like me. Jerry was one of my assistant principals because I made Jerry run after the students like I did. And I ran in my suit, my dress shoes, and when we caught that student said, "Thank you, Mr. Scheninger. Thank you for creating a jail out of what should be a school." That was the first kind of aha moment I had, and I questioned, are my actions actually creating a culture where our students want to be? Then, probably the most disruptive event in my professional career, I read a newspaper article about Twitter, and I swore I would never be on social media, and I got on Twitter because I saw I could be a better communicator, and that opened my eyes to what was possible. And that's when I was in a better position to lead change in its disruptive age with my teachers. But if you want to change everybody, regardless of your position, you have to be vulnerable and you have to be honest. That student, even though he said it kind of sarcastically, gave me feedback that I needed to be in a better position for my staff and my students. Vulnerability and honesty are assets, everyone. So where do we begin? We know we got to rethink normal, but how do we begin to rethink learning? What does learning look like? What should it look like? So as I try to create a definition before we get up to our first little turn and talk, you know, what you won't see on this definition is technology. Disruptive thinking is how does your culture, learning in your classrooms, provide students with the ability to replace conventional ideas with innovative solutions to authentic problems. The pandemic was an authentic problem that none of us were ready for. When the Commodore 64 and the Apple IIe started to change the computational landscape, that was, forced us to rethink what we did. Authentic problems are always going to be a part of our culture, everybody. We want to prepare our kids not to be skilled, but to be competent in this world. And what does that look and feel like? By the way, there's nothing new on any of my slides. The challenge with change is continuity and consistency. But when we want our learners to be competent, we want them to be creative scholars, reflective learners, collaborative workers, active engagers, self-directed managers, autonomous inquirers. Now, I'm very proud of my son, who just graduated, number 7 in his class of 1,000 in Cy-Fair ISD at Bridgeland High School. But you want to know what I'm really proud of? My son does all of this every single day with his side gig. He's a Twitcher. And he gets paid, if you don't know Twitch is, largest game streaming platform in the world, he gets passive, hundreds of dollars in passive income a week because he does everything on here. That's what we want for our learners. And when we think about the promise that we have and your essential role with creating those waves, every single learner that comes in your classroom, in your school, in your district has greatness hidden inside of them. Even the ones that might get you to rethink your career choice. Those kids need you even more. Your calling is to help those kids find that greatness and unleash it. And we begin with establishing, do kids have clarity? If we want to improve outcomes, if we want kids to focus in this world where they're TikToking, snapping, and all that other stuff that we all can't keep up with, in our classrooms, they need clarity. Let me show you why clarity is important.
Das hier ist mein Sektor. Das hier ist das wichtigste Gerät des Küstenwächters. Das Gerät. Überlebensradar.
Mayday, mayday. Hello, can you hear us? Can you hear us? Can you... Over. We are sinking. We are sinking.
Hello? This is the German Coast Guard.
We are sinking. We're sinking.
What are you thinking about?
Clarity matters, everybody. And when we think about kids understanding, well, why am I learning this? How will I use it? We don't want them to be college and career ready. How do we get them to be life ready? Because we don't know what is in store for our learners as much as we want to. We want our kids to be able to think, know, act, and go. So as we think about where we are and where we want to be, it's that getting them to be life ready. And it begins with understanding how important Tier 1 instruction is. That sets the stage. And are we consistent, and is there continuity in how we make our lessons not too long in terms of when we're facilitating content, including hooks. Hooks goes back to the work of Madeline Hunter in the late 1960s, whether you call it a hook, bell ringer, do now, reviewing prior learning, checking for understanding, building in authentic context application, providing closure at the end, scaffolding questions, all that not new, and then leveraging technology to support and enhance what we want our learners to be able to do. One thing that we did not have in my school when I was principal was clarity. And that was my fault as the principal, not my teachers. We were focusing on too many things, and when you focus on too many things, it's hard to have that consistent, clear vision. So we took a step back, and when I found the Rigor Ellens framework on social media, we asked our teachers to focus on 2 things. How do we improve the level of thinking in our classrooms, and how do we get our kids to apply their thinking in relevant and meaningful ways? 2 things. So when we look at how we can move around those different quads, I'm going to go into it quickly, and when we think about that relevance piece, that is the key to helping our kids survive and thrive in a disruptive world. But I want you to think about this in your role, whether you're a teacher, a coach, an administrator, whatever your role is. How can you infuse curiosity in a classroom? What strategies, what strategies have you found to be the most successful? Okay? 2 minutes, turn and talk. How do you infuse curiosity? How do you make it successful? Ready, set, go. All right, so when you think about interest, curiosity can spark learning. And how do we get kids to be curious? How do we get adult learners to be curious? Questions are more important than answers. We can now not only ask Siri and Alexa, but we can ask ChatGPT and Bard and get so many different responses. Are we asking the right questions? Are learners exploring real-world problems and scenarios that are meaningful to them? How do we provide choice in how they show what they know? Making connections between different content areas and adding a personal touch. Your stories, your experiences. Relational learning. So as we think about curiosity, what strategies do you see in your classrooms, in your schools? Quest Academy, they're presenting multiple times. They're a 6 through 9 school in Utah. Some of the best personalization you will ever see. But they pride themselves when those learners are in the classrooms, they're going to understand, why am I doing this and how will I use it? And one strategy they use consistently is they embed that into their exit tickets. How will you use what you are learning in your life? It's not that it's hard, everybody. Consistency and continuity. Relevant learning empowers kids to be curious. And that curiosity can unlock their potential. And that's what we want. We want to unlock those potential of kids because that's how we set the stage for improving outcomes. When we think about relevant learning, I think about Mrs. Williams. Mrs. Williams was my kindergarten teacher. By the way, this is the view from my childhood home in northwestern New Jersey. Yes, there are very rural areas in New Jersey, everybody. And when I was home, I took this picture, and it always reminds me of Mrs. Williams' kindergarten class. Why? Because she asked us, what do you want to be when you grow up and why? Now, what do you think I wanted to be based on this picture? A farmer. So I knew, I still remember that to this day. I know I wrote an essay. So my dad, retired principal, and my mom, retired teacher, they love keeping stuff. Really, it's my dad. And every time my dad comes down from Jersey to Texas, where I now live, he brings stuff, bins of stuff. My wife calls it junk. He calls it treasure. And he brings it, and I don't know what to do with it. And it just sits in my garage. And then I put it up in the attic when my wife says, are you going to throw it out? Are you going to get rid of it? And I put it up in the attic, which is probably not smart to do in Texas because it gets a little hot in the attics. So, and he had all this stuff in there, and I'm like, I went up there looking for something for another part of my presentation. Do you know what I found in there? I found the actual essay that I wrote. Now, my mom transcribed it, which you will see. I found that essay. I still remember this, everybody. We get so caught up on the things that we have to do, but those aren't necessarily the things that the kids are going to remember. Yeah, I wanted to be a farmer. I got it all wrong. I don't know why I wanted to work in the afternoon, but I did get it right in the late 70s that I wanted to get $20 an hour. Why did my parents keep this? Because they know what it meant to me. Speaking of rural schools, I was in a K through 8 building. This was my kindergarten class. I found that too. And quick fun fact, if there's 2 people up there that look the same, I'm an identical twin. That's my brother. Going to a K-8 school was kind of tough because none of our teachers could tell us apart. So my mom had belts made. Mine said Eric. My brother said Bob. And we had to wear those through 5th grade, which was kind of embarrassing. All right, I digress. But it's not just relevance, everybody. We want, for kids to succeed, we want them to think. Again, keep it simple. Challenge them to think. Have them engage in relevant learning. And again, it's not that it's hard. But if kids cannot even Google anymore, kids aren't going to go Google an answer. They're going to ask Siri or Alexa. Just like when you want to play a song, you call it out, and Alexa plays it for you. It's awesome, right? I tried using Pandora the other day here in the hotel, and it was not as seamless as Siri and Alexa. But are you scaffolding questions and tasks? If you're an administrator, how are you giving teachers timely, actionable, specific feedback? Because feedback is what changes practice. Differentiating, using writing and work as a measure of thinking, and creating challenging problems to solve. Rigor, getting kids to think. Rigor looks different for different learners, everybody. So let me show you an example with cat. I love cats. So let's look at how these 3 cats look at rigor differently. Here comes cat number 1. Here comes cat number 2. And here comes number 3, which I think really employs a rigorous mindset. Rigor looks different for different learners. I told you, everybody, nothing I said is new. But I will tell you that everything is grounded in peer-reviewed research. That QR code will take you to all of the research studies that support everything on here. It's not about gimmicks. It's not about not valuing the past. It's about understanding how we not just engage, how do we empower our learners? How do we understand that they think differently, they have different interests, even when we're focusing on the same standards? That's okay. Too much information, cognitive overload, tapping in the feelings. Understanding, I made a mistake, I had a typo. Do you understand that used to drive me crazy? And now it doesn't really bother me because I can go in and I can change it. Mistakes help us learn. Students need to understand that. Letting students teach themselves, novelty, active application, and collaboration. So it's not change for the sake of change, everybody. It's understanding what works. I haven't really talked about technology yet. Technology is awesome. I love technology, but I'm here to tell all of you, technology is not a silver bullet.
Emma. Huh? Emma. 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 Emma.
Hey, long live paper, everybody. Here's the thing. It's, technology, and this was created by a 6th grade teacher. Bill's the one who got me into writing books. He's now retired. And he'll be the first one to say, it's not about right or wrong. It's about knowing where we are and asking ourselves, number 1, how are your students using technology in ways that, okay, I got that wrong. How are your kids using technology to learn in ways that they couldn't without it? How are your kids using technology to learn in ways they couldn't without it? And number 2, how does your use of technology as an educator represent a fundamental improvement over what you've done in the past without it? If you can't answer those questions, don't use technology. But does it have purpose? Does it not just engage? Does it empower? Does it unlock that curiosity? Does it allow kids to think in challenging ways? That's what we want to focus on. Pedagogy first, technology second, if appropriate. In a disruptive world, we can't keep up with all the technology. It's not how many tools you use, it's the degree to which your students use them to learn in effective ways. Yeah, we want to use it to be more efficient, more effective, but how does tech help your kids learn? And when we look at all of the different ways, this is like one of my anchor charts. I know it's very busy. This is one of the reasons why I am here with ICLE and HMH, because my teachers, not me, my teachers are the ones that when we went bring your own device, flipped learning, personalized learning, helped get our graduation rate to 99.3%, 3rd highest in the state of New Jersey. 98% proficient or higher in 2014, highest ever. We fundamentally improved achievement across the board. Not what I did as a principal, what my teachers did. It started with clarity, getting everyone on the same page, common vision, common language, common expectations. And then when we did use technology, we made sure that it wasn't just, I'm going to add this, I'm going to have them do a Kahoot, we're going to use an interactive whiteboard. We wanted to make sure it was a fundamental improvement over what we did. I encourage you, this iteration of the framework can help you reflect on lesson design. And if you're an administrator, it can help you give valuable feedback, because that's what educators want. They want feedback. And oh boy, kids can do amazing things in a disruptive world when they're able to do real-world tools, to do real-world work. You see third graders solving problems on whiteboards and then explaining how they solved it on Flip. You see students who are solving problems on a dry erase board before they go on to Blue-Kit and Kahoot, which is a great example of rigor. You see teachers activating writing by using comics because she learned that kids weren't writing, and she used it as a catalyst. You see first graders demonstrating competency of sight words, where they're on Seesaw and they're given an authentic prompt. Design a classroom where kids your age learn best, using your sight words. All I'm showing you is good examples of effective teaching, not new. Technology is new. Research on the brain is new. But these strategies, scaffolding questions, checking for understanding, reviewing prior learning, closure, face-to-face collaboration and discourse, then going on the tool. And that's the thing. How does technology support and enhance what you are doing in your classrooms, in your schools? It all comes down to learning, everybody. Heck, every session you go to here at Model Schools, you need to walk out, hopefully, understand how is this going to improve learning in my classroom, in my school. I always say, I hope you take one or two things from me, because I know some of you are doing this already. Some of this is validation, but we always got to look for those small areas, sometimes small, which could be monumental, of where we can grow. But when we think about learning, how are we using data to group, regroup, target our instruction? How are we imparting rigor and relevance? Developing critical competencies? What does your pedagogy look like? How are you imparting agency, voice, choice, path, pace, place? How are you streamlining assessment and feedback? Technology supports and enhances all that. That's why it's on the outside. We don't design lessons, curriculum, schools around tech. We design it around what's best for kids and how to empower them to learn, and technology support for that. I think back to 8th grade. Now, I went to a K-8 school, and everybody knew who Mr. South was. He was the 7th and 8th grade science teacher. He wore flannel shirts, a tie that didn't match, a belt that didn't match, socks that didn't match. Everyone knew who he was and couldn't wait to have him. So in the 80s, in science, he's like, how will you colonize Mars? Well, we couldn't ask Siri, Alexa, Bard, ChatGPT. Couldn't do any of that. And what he did is he put us in teams. Each team had to come up with a central question and create a prototype. He used the jigsaw method, a prototype that was going to help the entire class colonize Mars. My friend and I, what do you think we did for research, everybody? What did we use? Encyclopedias. Remember, totally irrelevant the second they were published. But we found something called the mass driver that would propel resources from the surface of the moon to Mars. And we actually built a working prototype that shot toothpicks. Then on the weekends, yeah, this stuff doesn't happen anymore. We all signed permission slips, went to his garage in the middle of nowhere, and built larger prototypes. This one shot tennis balls. Then we had to write a research paper explaining why did we choose this, how would the prototype help the colony colonize Mars. He had a 5-point rubric to assess. Then he had his paper mache the entire classroom, made it look like the surface of Mars, had black lights, and brought our parents in and showed them what we actually learned. In that little story, just went over basically every concept that I have already presented. This isn't new, everybody. But the novelty, the creativity, the rigor Again, it's not new. Rethinking learning, we also got to rethink the learner. And it's time for another Turn and Talk. How do you or your school implement strategies that meet the needs of all learners? And be honest. If you don't know, we're not, or the many amazing things you're already doing, have that conversation, okay? 2 minutes. How do you or your school implement strategies that meet the needs of all learners? Turn and Talk, ready, set, go. So, listen, my job is to be honest. This is the bigger shift, everybody. I'm not going to sit up here and say this is easy. Everyone should be doing it, like starting, when the school year begins. But this is the hard work. This is the most gratifying work. Helping learners believe in themselves is one of the greatest gifts that you can bestow. I remember students going to our board meeting, and they brought the board to tears when they described how important the teacher librarian was. By the way, my teacher librarian, Laura Fleming, was my best hire ever. And how she created a makerspace and gave those kids hope because they would take these tests, they wouldn't do well, and they thought that they weren't smart. And when those kids said, hey, we didn't drop out of school, but we were able to make things with our hands, we were able to identify a problem, create a workable solution, that belief, everybody, it's so simple, but it's so powerful.
The very first time I saw ice hockey, it captured my heart.
Wow, so cool.
Forget it. We don't play ice hockey in Africa.
That day, I decided.
One day I will.
We bring the word of ice hockey to Africa. We train hard every day because we have a dream. People say,
How can we play ice hockey when we've never seen ice?
and I say, one day. One day. Now people say, how can you dream of the Olympics if you don't even know what snow tastes like? say.
One day I will.
You know, and when we think about helping kids believe, we have to come back to being honest and vulnerable. How is this system either helping or inhibiting? Now, I'm not saying we're going to get rid of standardized testing. I'm not saying to get rid of a one-size-fits-all approach, because it does have benefit when used in moderation. But we know, when we look at this image, that if all kids are doing the same thing at the same time, the same way, for the majority of their day, they're either going to check out, they're going to feel defeated. Now, I'm not saying we don't do direct instruction, we don't do whole group. It is still a high effect strategy when you look at John Hattie's work. But when we think about where we are, personalization is how we help all learners get what they need, when and where they need it to learn. That's what personalization is. What it's not is putting all kids on a device, having them use an adaptive learning tool. Because guess what ultimately happens? The kids hate the tool. They're not using it with a high degree of efficacy. Personalization doesn't have to involve technology. What did we do in my former school? My staff and I created our own learning academies, a school within a school model. Global leadership, arts and letters, STEAM. They had smaller learning communities at my colleague Sal's former school in Staten Island, New York. That's personalized, because students can follow their area of interest, have a cohort model of learning. When we think about personalization, it's not about doing everything on this image, but it's looking at where you are and thinking about where could you be. Voice, getting all kids involved. That could be you ask your question, review prior learning, check for understanding closure, and all the kids respond on a whiteboard. Or a dry erase desk, a dry erase wall, or they use technology. Choice, choosing the right tool for the right task, choosing how to show that they know, that they've learned. Going through a choice board. Pace, learning is a process. It's not an event. How do we allow our kids to work at their own pace within reason? Place, place could be outside. Place could be virtual. Virtual learning was not a failure, everybody. It might not have worked as well, but some kids need virtual learning because they are going through things that we could never, ever, ever comprehend. And path. If I put you all on that same linear path, you know that it's not going to meet some of your needs. Just like right now, I know I'm not meeting your needs because you got your nice little lines, you're all nice rows. I get that. So when we look at where we are, where we could be, you could do things like playlists, choice boards. This is from Alva Scott Elementary in Honolulu, and this is grade 6. And Julie, after facilitating a workshop, she came up with 4 activities. Kids worked through those activities. They got to choose the order. There was a timer going on, music in the background, but you know what she was doing? She was using data to pull kids for one-on-one intensive support. You could use flipped learning in secondary. This is from Corinth, Mississippi. If you go and ask a student, hey, show me what you're doing, they'll be able to pull up all their units, and they'll be able to show you everything that's that day. They have instructional videos. They have notes. Why? Because during the pandemic, we leveraged everything that they were already doing. And then it just became seamless putting it into Canvas. And when you talk to these kids, oh, Mr. S, I get to work ahead at my own pace, but in class, I get support from the teacher. If you're a teacher, you can control one thing and one thing only, how you use your time in class with your kids. If you're an administrator, you can control how you make time to give your teachers feedback. Everything else is always all in flux. When we think about personalized approaches, everybody, again, coming back to the rigor relevance framework, that's why it's an amazing tool to think about how students will move in all these different quads. And the idea is a student's trajectory is going to look different for each of them, and that's okay. Just like your trajectory has looked different to get you here. where you are now. But it begins to kind of really think about where are you? Where is your mindset? Are you afraid of change? How do you help others see the value? And that's sometimes the hardest part, is understanding and tackling our own biases and moving away from our experience. So as we think about all that, how many of you in this room went from point A to point B in a linear fashion? If any of you raise your hand, I'm going to call you a liar. None of us. Success is not linear. Guess what else is not linear? Learning. Learning is anything but a linear process. It is convoluted. It is messy. And that's how we learn. And in a disruptive world, where everything is changing, learning is going to look more and more like what's on the right-hand side. But as we think about where we are, it's often the way that we see and view things that skews reality. Let me give you an example. Oh, don't worry, no babies were hurt. When I first saw that, I'm like, oh my goodness. Hey, there's a lot of good stuff on TikTok and Instagram. You just got to filter it. So, I figured I'd bring in Prince William to tell you that you're all number one. That's what we see. And I got permission because I'm like, I don't want to offend anybody if I show this image, but here's reality, everybody. You know, we are influenced in so many different ways. You know, that's why I don't like the term expert or thought leader. I don't. There are no experts. There really aren't, especially in the education space. Actually, correction, there is. The experts are those people that take an idea, implement it with fidelity, within their context, and get results. And I am looking at all the experts. That's you, everybody. You all have to deal with the challenges, the ups and downs. You got to not only tackle sometimes your own mindset, but you got to tackle the status quo that often might be in your school, in your system. That's reality, everybody. But never discount the impact that your work has, because you are the ones that make change happen. But don't get sucked in to focusing on things that you cannot control. Guess what? If the internet goes down, you can't control that. If a student comes in with a broken device, you can't control that. If a community member comes in you can't control that. But what do we focus on? We focus on those things. You got to focus on what you can control. You can control making learning relevant. You can control challenging your kids. You can control looking at ways to personalize through rotational models, choice boards, playlists, flipped lessons, asynchronous modules, virtual learning. You can control collaborating with your colleagues to get information that's going to help you be a better educator. So as we think about all that, I want you to focus on the what ifs, not the yeah buts. Here's the one thing I get all the time. When I get teachers in a room and I'm like, hey, what do you need to be successful? What do you think I'm told? Time. I can't grant time. I could try to influence administrators. You know, when I think about time, we freed up our teachers 2 to 3 55-minute periods per week by cutting their contractual non-instructional duties. We freed up them all, 2 to 3 55 minutes per week, use Genius model, Google 80/20, whatever you want to call it, and let them follow innovative pathways. That was one way that I could, but I could not control how prep time was used. I couldn't. So when we think about time, one of the biggest things is look at the time that you have and how might you be able to use it more effectively. That's one thing that I think we all struggle with. But the yeah buts, yeah but not enough time. Yeah but too many mandates and directives. Yeah but not enough money. Those yeah buts are always going to be there, everybody. We got to focus on the what ifs. And as I think about that, and as I begin to wrap this up, This is Mr. Wynn. Well, a piece of artwork for Mr. Wynn. Mr. Wynn was my kindergarten through 8th grade art teacher. I had him for 9 years. That's what happens when you go to a K-8 school of less than 200 kids. And I recently connected with Mr. Wynn on Facebook, and he always he'll tie in the Northeast into his images. He'll do a lot of things from the Jersey Shore, but every time I look at his artwork, I have the best memories. I have the best memories of him as a person, as a teacher, not the best memories of me as an artist, because I can barely draw a stick figure. So when I went up into the attic, when I told you how my dad brought the treasure, I went up in the attic because when I was a principal, I had a ceramic bowl that I made in 1986. It was perfect to me. It was beautiful, it sat on my desk, and when I left the principalship, something happened to that bowl. And I was devastated because I wanted to put it on my office in my house. So when I went up into the attic to go through the bin, I was hoping that I was going to find something from Mr. Wynn's class. Well, I found Mrs. Williams's essay. The majority of the items that were in that bin were pieces of artwork from Mr. Wynn's class. The most important items were from a teacher who taught art, and I thought I had no business being an artist. Oh, by the way, that is a fully functional snail. Don't be like my friends. They say some very not nice things. Here's what I learned. First off, I wasn't that bad of an artist. I became a bad artist because I didn't have Mr. Wynn always giving me positive reinforcement, always making time, always challenging us. Everyone wanted to do pottery, ceramics, but he had us do watercolor, he had us work with wood. But I always remember how he was a good person. I always thought that I became a teacher because of Mr. South, but I really think I became a teacher because, and I wrote to Mr. Wynn on Facebook, and I said, I just need to tell you, you were the most influential teacher I've ever had in my life, and it's not because of the grades, it's not because I thought I was a good artist, it's because you helped me be a better human being. And that's your calling, everyone. That's how you make waves. That's how we rise above all these disruptive forces, where we help students and each other see that inner potential. And when we think about your calling, every single interaction you have with students, every single interaction you have is an opportunity to make a difference. We want to make sure now more than ever, we have to seize on those opportunities to make that difference, to impact kids, because they need you more than ever. And actually, you all need each other more than ever, because the world is going to continue to change, it's going to continue to be disruptive, it's going to continue to make people uncomfortable, and that's why we need educators like you who are going to navigate those waters.
Total $68.
I'm sorry. Can I return the cake, please?
Sure, yes.
I want the cake, please. I won't ask for anything else.
Next time, okay, where we can afford it?
Last time you said that. The cake is not tasty. Let's buy something else, okay?
They don't want that? I'll take it then.
Okay.
Hey. Hello, this is for you.
No, we cannot accept it.
Would you please?
There's no reason for you to buy the cake for us.
Well, when I was 7, my mother wanted to buy me a cake.
Mommy, I just saw
but at the counter, we didn't have enough.
Can we get something else?
It's my birthday today. Can I choose my own cake, please?
I'm sorry.
Then, there's this man. I've never met him before.
Here, have the cake. Happy birthday.
I didn't know his name. I never got a chance to say thank you. But I've never forgotten him.
Thank you.
No, thank you.
Can I have your contact number? Let me repay you when we have the money.
Promise me something, okay? Someday, when you're able to help somebody, you will do it?
I chose this cake for your birthday.
Wow, this is my favorite. Thank you.
Let's go and put some candles.
Oh, careful. You shouldn't have spent the money.
Actually, I came and paid for it.
He give me this note.
Please write down your address. I'll bring the money back to you later.
A simple act of caring creates an endless ripple.
I need to say thank you. Thank you for caring. Thank you for showing up. Thank you for being there for your students and for each other. And thank you for doing things that technology cannot do, and that's exhibit empathy. And that's really what we need. Listen, improving outcomes takes work. We all want that. But students, and even people, you need to know that your colleagues, your schools, your districts care about you. Your kids need to know that they are cared for. It's your dedication to kids that creates these never-ending waves that positively impact them now and into the future. Why did I tell you about Mrs. McDonald, Mrs. Williams, Mr. South, and Mr. Wynn? Because I can guarantee that you have those same teachers, coaches, custodians, administrators, bus drivers. You had someone that impacted you profoundly, that got you to where you are today. Mine happen to be teachers, and I think that's why I eventually became a teacher, to try to make a difference. And we know we got good days, and we got not so good days. Focus on the good days. Focus on the wins. And by the way, there is no such thing as a quick win. Small win, quick win. I'm telling you right now, a quick win to one, small win could be monumental to someone else. Take those wins and celebrate them, everybody. And understand the waves that you make have the power to disrupt thinking, but the waves that you make can also disrupt the status quo. Watch the raft. Oh, all right. So going forward, everybody, I got some feedback from some teachers, and they're like, Eric, you can't just have the video where some of us are tearing up. You got to make us laugh. I love feedback. So that's why I put that little clip in there. Hey, going forward, challenge the status quo. Be honest and vulnerable. Determine what you need to be successful. Advocate for that. And get that job-embedded ongoing support. The book, if you want it, is in the bookstore or on Amazon. Resources, free resources are at the bottom right. Thanks, everybody. Enjoy the rest of the event. Keep making a difference.